Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. I'm your host, Zack Hamilton. Of course, you all know that. What you care about is who's in the hot seat and what are you going to hear this guest unfuck today. And I'm really excited for today's conversation. Arielle, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you, Zach. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I love talking to, you know, uh, practitioners like yourself and just getting a preview of the topic. This is going to be a great one. But before we dive into it, I always like to ask our guests, um, set the scene for us. Where do you like to have these types of conversations?
Well, I love to have these conversations walking around. Nice long walks outside. I spend all day, at the computer, talking to coworkers, looking at data, all of that good stuff. And sometimes when you just like get away and go into a new atmosphere, I think it's really refreshing and it's these random ideas will hit you and you go, wow, I never thought of that before. So
I
that's where
love
I
it.
love having these types of conversations.
I love it. I don't, are you, so I noticed when I started to walk outside or even when I run, to your point, like ideas really start to flow to where I always now just have to run with my phone in my hand because I have to take voice notes so I don't forget something. Are you
Yes,
like that as well?
all the time.
Okay, I'm not the only one.
All the time I make notes like that. Yeah,
Yeah, very
absolutely. And it's
cool.
nice to send yourself text messages and stuff and come back to ideas. So I'm with
No,
you.
my texts are flooded. Like,
Yes.
and sometimes though I forget, like, what was that again?
Yes, yes. I think we've all done that too.
Well, very cool. Ariel, you work with a lot of companies globally. What's that one topic right now in customer experience that's just making you cringe that you wanted to join the hot seat to unfuck?
Yeah, well, I there's so many fun topics out there, but I really love, you know, really understanding customers in a way that challenges how they're traditionally viewed maybe by certain companies. It's so easy to put customers into boxes based on some of the data or the ways that we look at them, maybe by plan type, for example. But when you really step back, there's so many other ways that you can look at, groups of customers and customer desires and how to interact with them to get better results and better engagement and ultimately better customer experiences.
Yeah, I think this is such an incredible topic. One, I think about like personalization. Like we've been talking about personalization for 20 plus years and we've just haven't figured it out. And I'm with you. Like, I gave this example not too long ago, but I am someone who, if you think about kind of different demographics, so I'm a big Nike fan and I will leverage Nike for my girls. So for soccer or for volleyball, for the different sports, I'm also a huge Jordan fans. So I wear a lot of Jordan sneakers. And so to your point, the way that they have boxed me into that segmentation is everything that has to do with Jordans. But if they actually looked at my other, where I spend most of my money is like running for myself. So I'm curious, like, why are brands still struggling with this today on like how they identify their customers?
I think it's just easy, right? It's really easy to look at customers and, a huge segment of customers acting the same way as one another, seeing the desired outcomes from that group of customers. And you say, yes, this makes total sense, right? And it makes sense with how we market, it makes sense with how we operate. And you just go along with that assumption all along. And sometimes when you dig a little bit deeper, there might be a better way of looking at customers. And I think that's what's so easy to miss because it's so, you're so used to looking at customers in these predefined segments.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, I definitely have that opinion, but do you think this predefined segmentation is what is kind of fucking personalization today?
Yeah, at times. At times it is, right? Because we're looking at customers, we're looking at the groups, we're looking at automation, repeatable processes, certainly organizational efficiencies, right? Where you're treating customers in similar groups in the same way. But meanwhile, you have this personalization and, that you really want to get to really understand customers at a more human level, right? And so making sense of, being efficient and getting better results, but taking all of that into account can be really tricky.
Yeah, I find that as well. I mean, there's so many organizations that I've worked with where it's all about cohort and cohort segmentation. And then I love that next conversation that's like, okay, we have groups of thousands of customers who are not behaving specifically in that perfect box. And I also then love how they call them, oh, they're just anomalies.
Mhm. Yes, right. It's easy to say that's, that's a one-off, or to get lost in the one-offs and, wait, look at this. You're like, no, no, look at the bigger picture, right? And so it goes both ways on that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these topics too when you really think about, kind of the future. How do you think we will essentially look at cohorts of agents? So if agents are going to be acting on our behalf, doing shopping for us or our mobile banking for us, for example, how are marketers going to have to react to that?
Yeah, I think it's really understanding what like the desired outcomes are,
Yeah.
right? And what tools are available and what paths are available, and to really have more flexibility built into whatever structure you're creating so that you're not boxing anybody in or, making universes too defined to achieve what you really want.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this kind of brings us to kind of that first player tip. I know a lot of people in businesses, Ariel, that really just struggle with kind of this. How do we define our cohorts or segmentation, or how do we even just get to one to one? So, what's your first player tip?
Yeah, well, I would say definitely look at your data and challenge the assumptions that you have. So challenge the boxes that you've already created, and say, is there something else, another way to define customers, to create different customer segments, that tells a better story, a stronger story? Can you layer cohorts on cohorts and, find different ways that similar groups of customers are acting and run with those?
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so sure. So, at one of the companies I worked with, for example, we looked at customers by plan types, and these were customers that had very similar goals. The plans that they had signed up for had the same functionality, right? So it was very easy to say, okay, this is this plan, and this is this plan, and this is how we're going to lead them through these customer journeys. And when we stepped back and looked at customer behavior, we found a very different story that while plan types and their goals was very important, certainly it was actually more important to look at like how customers were wanting to interact with us. And we had customers who wanted to, set up their whole account by themselves. They had customers who wanted more help. There were customers who wanted the experts to set up their account, right? So it's really customers from all the plan types raising their hands in different ways that they were interacting with us. So it was something that we didn't have a box to capture at the time, in terms of data. So, when you're looking at customer journeys and looking at which path to take people on and how to kind of measure and track and do better when you're working with these customers, it was like this kind of blind spot that we had never really dug into. And then when we started looking at it, we said, wait, we can do better. We can meet these customers where they are, and help them more. And when they're ready to, change paths, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how it's challenged the assumptions, challenge the boxes that you've already kind of predefined for them. Because to your point, too often we just kind of define the box, and then it's just okay, system, go ahead and fill the boxes for us based on the parameters that we've set. But then we never really go back and challenge them. And so I really love how that's kind of player tip number one. What's the second player tip?
Yeah. So secondly is to really listen to the aha moments, from your customers. Like you want to hear the good and the bad, but to really dig a little deeper when you're getting the good moments of clarity, right? It's easy to get lost in, oh, that you could do this better, you could do that better. But when you're listening to customers across their journey, they tell you different moments of like what's so special to them, and then you can really leverage that for all customers. So that can look very different when you're, listening to sales demos versus new customers versus existing customers. And sometimes it's just watching their faces light up or listening for the words they're saying. Wow, I never knew you could do that. You saved me so much time. right? And those are the things that, again, you may not capture in some of the data you're collecting, but by, observing customers in a different way, you can pick up on it, and then, introduce those things in that way to other customers as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important tip because I think too often we get, and I know I'm guilty of this as well, but I get so fixated on kind of customer friction because that is where a large portion of, that leakage or revenue or churn, that's where that sits. And so sometimes I can get really obsessed with how do I continuously just eliminate the negative friction where I lose out on those positive moments. And speaking of that, I was sat in on a demo to actually it was this morning um, with a client, just watching them observe kind of this technology platform. And to your point, I was just kind of observing his facial expressions, and he really lit up on this specific kind of module, right? And
Yes.
so I was really curious about, okay, why did he light up? But the person who was running the demo, I think they just got so stuck in their script where they didn't really notice that customer light up. And so I actually ended up meeting with them afterwards and I said, "Hey, I took a screenshot. And I said, at this moment, you really lit up. Like I could see your face like lighting up. Tell me why. Can you tell me more about that?" And he went on for like 15 minutes about, he's kind of envisioned something like this, but could never really like put it down on pen and paper, like what it was, but felt like this is what was bringing it to life. And he just had so many ways that he wanted to leverage that module. But to your point, because it wasn't observed, that company will never know.
Yes, and that's exactly what you're describing, right? And it's very exciting when you see it, right? And it's not something, even sometimes reading notes, you don't get it the same way as when a person's talking to you and you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their smile. So I think those are such valuable moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to me, it's that's where, to your point, like we're talking about B2B kind of SaaS right now. I mean, those were the deal. That's where the deal could be won, right? If
Yes.
you really lean into there and understand, okay, you really lit up about this. So what could this potentially unlock for you? And how do you see yourselves leveraging this in the future? Like that could win the deal for them alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And then taking it to the next level, it feeds into customer training, it leads into positioning, right? It
Yeah.
leads into the marketing. It's those special insights where you can really, apply them across the company and a lot of the operational things that companies do.
Yeah, I think that's such a fantastic second player tip. What's the third player tip you have?
Yeah, so I would say, timing is so important, and when we're looking at like our customer journey, and we're asking customers to do certain things, sometimes it's not about what you're asking them, but when you're asking them, that makes such a huge difference. So I would say that's really the key is to, really figure out what timing is really important. And, uh, go on that, to get improvements.
Yeah, I think that's also really important too. And you think about just, are we delivering the right experiences at the right time? And I think too often, brands, to your point, kind of miss out on the timing aspect because, again, I want to box them into a perfect cohort. We're going to stick to kind of those scripts that we've written. And now I want to create these like perfect automations and sequences that control it. And to your point, we can miss out on a lot of timing. And so I'm
Yes.
curious if you have like an example of how that's really impacted the overall kind of buying experience or customer experience where just by tweaking something, it's led to more, better business outcomes.
Sorry, it just got really choppy.
You're good now.
Oh, now I hear you. Can you say that again? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So I'm wondering, like, do you have an example of a time where, everyone's kind of been put into this perfect box? Teams have all this automation set up. They don't look for those positive moments, but they've built all these automations to where now they're delivering things, but not at the right time. And
Yeah,
so they're
so
missing it, and it creates a negative impact.
yeah, for sure. So at one of the companies I've worked with, Back to like the onboarding example, right? We know that, customers who engage with us for onboarding have a much better success rate with terms of achieving the goals that they're looking to achieve. And we had a whole automation set up. We had human phone calls going to these customers. We had automated emails going to these customers. And what we found was, a lot of these customers were just signing up too late and kind of like the window was closed and they were not engaging to us. We could still get to them and help them and assist them, but it was not as early. If they did it earlier in their journey, they were more successful. And so this was something where we introduced, something immediately after account creation where it just kind of popped on their screen. We positioned it more as like, this is the next step. And customers would engage. And we saw 64% improvement in customers who are taking that step. And so, it was the same messaging, right? It was just much earlier in their journey, and it made all the difference. And then, we could see along the journey also there were things that we'd ask customers to do and they may or may not do them. But when we triggered them based on certain other actions, it made more sense to customers, right? It suddenly became relevant to them. And again, they were engaging more and we were getting better results. So I think really looking at the timing, because it all goes back to the customers and what they're expecting and what they're looking for at that moment. And, then you can have a more personalized journey. And a lot of this still can be done with automation, which is really great too.
Yeah, and what I loved about this is you really focused on those behavioral signals. So less about customer sentiment, but more about those behavioral signals. And I also love kind of these compounding those micro moments, right? Where, hey, you triggered it with something else, and that made it more meaningful for them. Sometimes I also see that we overwhelm customers, especially through onboarding, with too many steps. And it
Yes.
becomes overwhelming, and then they don't complete everything because they just give up. So I loved how it's like, look at the behavioral piece of it and then combine it, combine some of those steps. It just makes sense.
Yes, exactly. It can be very overwhelming, and that's also what makes it very tricky,
Yeah.
right? To find the right cadence of talking to customers to help them.
Yeah. Ariel, this has been such a great conversation. If any of our listeners want to go deeper in this conversation with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn at Arielle Kimmer. I'm happy to talk to anybody who reaches out.
Yeah, and for all of our listeners, we will link Arielle in the newsletter, of course, the show notes, so you'll be able to reach out to find her. Arielle, thank you for joining me in the hot seat today.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, come back soon.
Thank you. Bye.